Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, if you're new here, hit subscribe, because today's story is one you don't want to miss. Let's get into it. Chapter 1, Jiwoo's POV. The job nobody warned me about. I should have asked more questions before I said yes. That is the first rule of freelance translating, actually. Ask questions. Read the room. Do not, under any circumstances, accept a job from a man whose bodyguards flinch when he clears his throat. I broke all 3 rules in about 4 minutes. My name is Jiwoo. I am 26, and I translate Korean to English for a living, mostly boring stuff, business contracts, immigration paperwork. One very memorable wedding speech where the groom's grandmother called the bride's family cheap in front of 200 guests, and I had to soften it into frugal in a charming way. So when the email came in asking for a private translator, cash payment, immediate start, I figured it was another rich family with drama and a language barrier. I did not expect the address to be a stone mansion behind iron gates in Greenwich, Connecticut, with a driveway longer than my entire apartment building. I definitely did not expect him. Kang Taemin stood in the doorway like he owned the air around him, which, judging by the way 3 grown men in suits went quiet the second he exhaled, he probably did. Tall, unfairly put together in a charcoal sweater that had no business looking that soft on someone, that terrifying. Alpha, obviously. The kind of alpha whose scent hits you like a slammed door, all cedar and something darker underneath, something that made the hair on my arms stand up before my brain caught up. "You're the translator," he said, not a question. "You're the guy who apparently can't afford a hello," I said back, because my mouth has never once consulted my survival instincts before opening. Something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile. More like he'd forgotten his face was allowed to do that. "Sit," he said, and gestured to a chair like this was a job interview, and not, as I would come to learn, an audition for a much darker kind of employment. Here's the thing about my ears. They're not normal. Haven't been since I was 17, and my grandmother pressed a warm palm to my forehead during a fever and said, quietly, that the gift had finally woken up. I hear things other people don't, whispers 3 rooms away, a heartbeat spiking under a calm voice, the particular silence of someone deciding whether to lie to me. So when Taemin's men thought they were being subtle, murmuring by the kitchen while I sat translating shipping documents that were absolutely not about shipping, I heard every word. Names, a date, a location downtown, and the word eliminate, said so casually it made my stomach drop through the floor. I kept my face blank and my pen moving, translating a line about port taxes, while my hidden hearing locked onto the real conversation happening 30 feet away, the one about which senator's driver they'd already paid off, and who was going to make sure he never made it to Thursday's vote. I should have gotten up. I should have walked straight out that iron gate and never looked back. Instead, I looked up and found Taemin already watching me, dark eyes narrowed like he'd noticed something was wrong and hadn't quite figured out what. "Something the matter, translator?" he asked, low, almost gentle. I smiled my best customer service smile. "Nope," I lied, "just concentrating." His gaze held mine, a beat too long, like he knew. Chapter 2, Jiwoo's POV. Taemin didn't buy it. I could tell by the way his eyes stayed on me a second too long before he finally looked away, like he was filing something for later. "You'll finish the documents tonight," he said. "There's a guest room upstairs if you need it." "I don't need a guest room. I need a paycheck and a way home," I said, even though every instinct I had, the good ones and the reckless ones, told me to stay exactly where I was until I understood what I'd just overheard. "Consider it an incentive." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "The roads out here flood after 9. You wouldn't make it 2 miles. It hadn't rained all week." I opened my mouth to argue, and then closed it again, because arguing with an alpha who ran a fake shipping empire out of his living room seemed like a good way to end up part of that shipping empire, permanently, so I stayed. The house at night was worse than the house in daylight. Quiet in the wrong way, like it was holding its breath. I sat at the kitchen table, pretending to translate customs forms while my hearing did the real work, chasing footsteps down hallways, a low argument 2 floors up that cut off the second someone noticed a door was open. Taemin found me there around midnight, 2 mugs in his hands, steam curling off both. "You don't sleep," he said. Not a question. He seemed to specialize in those. "Neither do you, apparently." He set 1 mug in front of me. Chamomile. I hadn't told anyone I liked chamomile. Someone had asked the housekeeper, or he'd noticed, or he was just guessing, and somehow the second option felt more dangerous than the first. "You flinched earlier," he said, "by the kitchen, when Minho and the others were talking." My pulse kicked up. I made myself shrug, casual, unbothered, the exact opposite of what I felt. Shipping talk gives me anxiety. I'm very passionate about tariffs. Jiwoo. It was the first time he'd said my name. It landed somewhere under my ribs, warm and unwelcome. "I run a family that most people are terrified of," he said quietly, sitting across from me. "I need to know if you're one of the smart ones, or one of the ones who lies to my face." I looked at him, really looked, and underneath the cedar and the danger, I caught something else. Exhaustion. The kind that lives in your bones after years of carrying something heavy alone. "I lie to everyone's face," I said. "It's kind of my whole personality, but I'm not stupid enough to lie to yours twice." That got an actual laugh out of him, short and surprised, like it escaped before he could stop it. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, made him look, God help me, kind of gorgeous, in a way that had nothing to do with the danger and everything to do with the way his eyes crinkled when something caught him off guard. I hated that I noticed. I hated it more that some traitor part of me wanted to make him laugh again. "Get some sleep," he said, standing, gathering the mugs. "Long day tomorrow." He paused at the doorway, back to me. "For what it's worth," he said. "Thank you for staying." He didn't know what I'd heard. He didn't know I was sitting there with a name and a date and a word that meant someone's life was about to end, turning it over and over, trying to figure out what kind of man I'd just agreed to work for. I didn't sleep that night, not because of the storm that never came. Because somewhere down the hall, a man who thanked me like it cost him something was also, apparently, planning to kill a United States senator. And I couldn't decide which version of him I believed. Chapter 3. Taemin's POV. What the house doesn't say. I have run this family for 6 years, and I have never once brought a stranger into my kitchen at midnight to drink tea. I told myself it was strategy. Keep the translator close, keep him comfortable, keep him talking. That was the plan when I hired him, before I'd even seen his face. A pretty voice on the phone, sharp and unbothered by my silences, the way most people weren't. Then he showed up and called me a guy who couldn't afford a hello, and something in my chest, something that had been quiet for a very long time, sat up and paid attention. That was the problem with Jiwoo. He wasn't supposed to be a problem. He was supposed to translate documents and go home and forget he'd ever seen this house. Instead, I found myself watching the kitchen door at midnight, hoping he hadn't gone to bed yet. My cousin Jaehyun called before dawn. "You're getting soft," he said. No greeting, the way he always started conversations, he'd already decided the ending of. A translator, Taemin, in the house, during a live operation. He translates shipping contracts. He doesn't know anything, doesn't he? Something in his voice made my jaw tighten. Jaehyun and I had grown up 2 doors apart, raised by the same cold rules, but where I'd learned to carry the weight quietly, he'd learned to resent carrying it at all. Our father chose me to lead. Jaehyun has never once let me forget he thinks that was a mistake. "Handle the senator situation," I said. "That's your job this week. Leave the translator to me." "Careful," Jaehyun said, too lightly. "People who get careless around outsiders don't stay in charge for long." He hung up before I could answer, which was its own kind of message. I stood in my study a long time after that, looking out at the grey morning, thinking about the way Jiwoo's whole face changed when he laughed, sharp and unguarded for exactly 1 second before he caught himself. Thinking about the flinch by the kitchen door that he thought I hadn't noticed. I had built my entire life on noticing things. Minho knocked and let himself in before I answered, which meant it was bad. Jaehoon's been making calls, he said. Ones that don't go through the usual channels. I don't like it. Since when do you like anything about my cousin? Since never, but this feels different. Minho hesitated, which he rarely did. You should watch your back this week, Taemin. And maybe watch the boys too. If he's heard something he shouldn't have, and Jaehoon finds out before we do, that's a problem neither of us wants to solve after the fact. I thought of Jiwoo's face last night, the careful blankness that hadn't quite covered the fear underneath. He had heard something. I'd known it the moment he flinched. The question that kept me standing at that window long after Minho left wasn't whether Jiwoo was a liability. It was why, knowing that, I still wanted to protect him more than I wanted to protect myself. Chapter 4. Taemin's POV. The wrong kind of loyalty. By the time Jiwoo came downstairs, hair messy, wearing yesterday's shirt, and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else, I had already decided 3 different ways to keep him safe, and rejected all of them. You look like a man who's been plotting something, he said, pouring himself coffee, like he'd lived in this kitchen his whole life. I look like a man who didn't sleep. Join the club. He studied me over the rim of his mug, too perceptive for someone who claimed to only care about tariffs. You're worried about something. It's written all over your very expensive sweater. I almost smiled. That was becoming a dangerous habit around him. I need you to finish the remaining contracts today, I said instead. And then, I think it's best if you take a few days off. Paid, obviously. Something flickered across his face, quick and unreadable. Trying to get rid of me? Trying to keep you out of something you don't want to be part of. Funny, he said, setting down his mug with more force than necessary, because it kind of feels like I already am part of it, whether you tell me the truth or not. I didn't answer, and the silence that followed said more than I wanted it to. Later that afternoon, Jaehoon showed up unannounced, the way he always did, when he wanted to unbalance a room. He looked at Jiwoo working quietly at the kitchen table, for a beat too long. So, this is the translator, he said. All charm, none of it real. Han Jiwoo, was it? My cousin doesn't usually let outsiders this close. Lucky me, Jiwoo said, not looking up, and I felt something in my chest loosen, with something dangerously close to pride. Jaehoon's smile didn't move, but his eyes did, sliding to me, with a question I didn't like the shape of. A word, Taemin, he said. Family business. We stepped into the hallway. He kept his voice low, pleasant, the way he always sounded right before he said something that would ruin someone's week. The senator situation is handled, he said. Thursday, like we discussed, clean. We didn't discuss anything. That was your operation, not mine. Was it not? Something sharpened in his expression, gone as quick as it came. I only assumed you'd approved it, since you approve everything that keeps this family standing. There it was, the old resentment, worn smooth from years of handling. I want details, I said, today. Of course. He glanced past me, toward the kitchen, toward Jiwoo, though I'd think carefully about who's in the house while we discuss them. Ears have a way of hearing things they shouldn't. He left without waiting for a response, the way he always did, leaving the threat to sit in the air behind him. I stood in the hallway a long moment, my pulse louder than it should have been. Jaehoon had said Thursday like we discussed, and we hadn't discussed anything, which meant either my cousin was lying to my face about an operation that didn't exist the way he described it, or he was planning something that had never been mine to approve at all. Chapter 5. Author's POV. What neither of them knew yet. 3 miles from the Kang estate, in a rented office above a dry cleaner that had gone out of business 2 winters ago, Kang Jae-hyun sat across from 2 men who did not officially exist on any payroll, family or otherwise. "The senator dies Thursday night," Jae-hyun said, sliding a folder across the table. "Public enough that it can't be ignored, quiet enough that it traces back to my cousin's people, not mine." One of the men frowned. "Taemin didn't order this." "Taemin doesn't need to know he ordered it," Jae-hyun said. "By the time the council finds out a senator died on Kang territory, under Kang protection, it won't matter whose signature is on the plan. It will only matter whose name is on the house." It was, in its own cold way, an elegant plan. Jae-hyun had spent 6 years watching his younger cousin inherit a seat that should have been his, watching the family council defer to a man who led with quiet control, instead of the fear Jae-hyun believed loyalty was built on. He told himself this was correction, not betrayal. He told himself a great many things that let him sleep at night. What Jae-hyun did not know was that Choi Min-ho, loyal in the specific and dangerous way of men who had buried friends for this family, had already begun quietly pulling financial records that did not add up, a trail of shell accounts leading back to an office above a defunct dry cleaner. What Taemin did not know was that his cousin's operation had never been about a senator at all, not really. The senator was a means. The end was Taemin's own name, tied to blood that wasn't his to spill, handed to the council on a plate no one could argue with. And what Jiwoo did not know, sitting at that kitchen table with his hypersensitive hearing catching every fragment the house allowed him, was that his grandmother, decades ago, had once sat in a very similar kitchen, translating for a very different Kang, and had walked away from this family the day she overheard an order that made her sick to her stomach. She had never told her grandson why she flinched every time he mentioned wanting to work with wealthy Korean families in finance. She had simply made him promise, quietly, the year before she passed, that if he ever felt his gift pulling him toward danger, he would trust it completely. He did not know yet that his gift had chosen this house for a reason. None of them knew, yet, that Thursday was coming for all 3 of them at once, and that when it arrived, it would not ask permission to break something open. Chapter 6. Jiwoo's POV. The quiet between the storms. Taemin found me on the back porch that evening, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like cedar and clearly belonged to him, watching the last light go grey over the trees. "You're supposed to be inside," he said, sitting down beside me anyway, which told me he didn't mean it. "You're supposed to be plotting something with your terrifying cousin," I said. "Yet here we both are, breaking our own rules." He huffed a laugh, quiet, tired. For a long moment neither of us said anything, and it wasn't the bad kind of silence. It was the kind that felt like it belonged to both of us. "My grandmother used to say, 'Silence is where the truth lives,'" I said eventually. "Everyone's so busy talking, they forget to just listen." Smart woman. She was. My throat tightened, unexpected. She passed 2 years ago, told me right before, if my hearing ever felt like it was pulling me somewhere dangerous, I should trust it, not run from it. Taemin was quiet for a moment. "Is that what it's doing? Pulling you somewhere dangerous?" I looked at him, at the exhaustion under his eyes, the careful way he held himself like the weight never fully set down. I thought about the word eliminate, and the date I'd overheard, and the fact that I still hadn't said any of it out loud, because some reckless, stupid part of me wasn't ready to lose whatever this quiet thing was between us. "Maybe," I admitted. "I don't know yet." He reached over, slow enough that I could have pulled away, and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered against my jaw, warm despite the cold porch air. "Whatever it is," he said, voice low, "you can tell me. I know I'm not exactly an easy man to trust. But I would burn this whole family down before I let anyone hurt you for what you know." My heart did something complicated and unwise. That's a lot of commitment for a guy you hired 4 days ago. I don't do anything halfway. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. Not even this. He kissed me then, slow and careful, like he was asking a question with his mouth instead of his words. I answered by leaning in, fingers curling into his sweater, every rational thought I had dissolving into cedar and warmth, and the terrifying realization that I didn't want this to be a mistake. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing like we'd run somewhere. "Taemin," I whispered, "there's something I have to tell you." His eyes opened, searching mine, already bracing. Thunder cracked somewhere in the distance, the storm finally arriving 3 days late. "Tell me," he said. I opened my mouth to finally say it. And that was the exact moment Minho burst through the porch door, face pale, phone in hand. "Taemin, we have a problem." Chapter 7. Jiwoo's POV. Minho's voice was tight, in a way that made my whole body go cold. The senator's security detail. They just confirmed a credible threat for Thursday night. Someone leaked details that only family could know. Taemin stood so fast, the porch chair scraped against wood. Leaked how? That's the thing. Minho's eyes flicked to me, just once, and I felt it like a slap. The details match a conversation from 4 days ago. In this house. The air left my lungs. "You think I said something?" I said slowly, standing too, the blanket falling off my shoulders. "You think I told someone?" "I think," Minho said carefully, "that you were in this kitchen the day this operation was discussed, and now somehow the details are outside this family." "I haven't told a single soul anything," I said, my voice cracking on the edges of something between fear and fury. "I heard things I shouldn't have. Yes, I've been sitting on it for 4 days because I didn't know what to do, because I was scared, because I actually started to care what happened to this idiot family. God help me. But I didn't leak anything." Taemin turned to me slowly, and for the first time since I'd met him, I couldn't read his face at all. "You heard," he repeated, 4 days ago, and you said nothing. I was trying to figure out if you were a monster before I decided whether to run or stay, I said, tears burning now, angry ones. "Forgive me for not immediately trusting the Mafia alpha who kept a gun in his desk drawer. You should have told me. I was about to, 2 minutes ago actually, before your porch door decided to interrupt the moment where I finally trusted you enough to say it." Convenient timing. The words landed like a slap. I stared at him, at the man who'd kissed me like I was something precious 10 minutes ago, now looking at me like I was a stranger who'd walked a bomb into his house. "You don't actually believe that," I said quietly. He didn't answer. That was worse than if he had. "Fine," I said, voice shaking now, grabbing my bag from the kitchen table with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. "Believe whatever helps you sleep tonight. I'm done. Jiwoo." "No!" I turned at the door, tears finally spilling over, furious at myself for letting them. I trusted my gift enough to stay in this house full of dangerous men. I trusted you, and the first sign of trouble, you looked at me like I was the enemy. I walked out into the storm without a coat, without a plan, without anywhere to go, and the worst part wasn't the rain soaking through my shirt in seconds. The worst part was that some small, stubborn, heartbroken piece of me was still listening for footsteps behind me, hoping he'd follow. He didn't. Chapter 8. Taemin's POV. I let him walk out into the rain, and I have replayed that decision every hour since. Minho found me an hour later, still standing on the porch, soaked through from the door I hadn't bothered to close. "You know he didn't leak anything," Minho said quietly. "You knew it, the second the words left your mouth. I saw your face. Then why didn't I stop him?" "Because you're scared," Minho said, blunt in the way only 20 years of loyalty earns a man. "Scared of what it means that you'd burn this family down for a translator you met 4 days ago. Scared enough that accusing him felt safer than admitting how much he already matters to you. I hated that he was right. I traced the leak," Minho continued, quieter now. It wasn't Jiwoo. The call came from a burner tied to an account. We finally cracked this afternoon. It routes back to an office, above a dry cleaner, 3 miles from here. Jaehyun's been running this whole operation off the books. The senator was never the real target, Taemin. You are. He's setting you up to take the fall so the council removes you and hands him the family. The floor seemed to tilt under me. Every conversation with Jaehyun over the past week rearranged itself into a different shape entirely, one I should have seen from the start. Thursday, I said. That's not when they kill the senator. That's when they make sure it looks like I did. Yes. And Jiwoo, brilliant, sharp, terrified Jiwoo, had walked out into a storm with a target on his back that he didn't even know existed, because the moment he became inconvenient to Jaehyun's plan, he became a loose end. I was already moving before I finished the thought, grabbing my coat, my keys, every version of calm I usually wore stripped away. Where do you think he went? Minho called after me. I don't know, I said, already out the door into the rain. But I know exactly who might already be looking for him. The drive into town felt endless, headlights smearing gold across wet asphalt, my hands too tight on the wheel. I called Jiwoo's phone 4 times. It went to voicemail every time, and each unanswered ring felt like a physical blow. I had spent 6 years building walls so thick that nothing could get through them. It had taken 4 days for one furious, soaked, brilliant Omega to walk straight through every single one, and I had repaid him by looking at him like a stranger the moment it mattered most. If I got the chance to fix this, I was not going to waste it being careful anymore. Chapter 9. Jiwoo's POV. What the storm left behind. I ended up at an all-night diner 2 miles from the estate, soaked and shivering in a booth by the window, nursing coffee I couldn't afford to be drinking, instead of figuring out where I was actually supposed to go. That's where the man found me. Average height, unfamiliar face, too calm for someone walking into a diner at 11 at night. Han Jiwoo, he said, sliding into the booth across from me, like we were old friends. Kang Jaehyun sends his regards, and a request that you forget everything you heard this week. My heart slammed against my ribs. I recognized the voice, low and unhurried, from somewhere down that hallway days ago. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, reaching slowly for my bag. I think you do. His pleasant expression didn't move. You have very good hearing, from what I understand. That's a problem for people who'd rather stay invisible. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs had gone numb with fear, and before I could decide whether screaming would help or make things worse, the diner door slammed open hard enough to rattle the windows. Taemin stood there soaked to the bone, chest heaving, eyes locking onto mine across the room with a kind of desperate relief that undid something tight in my chest. The man across from me stood slowly, unbothered. Taemin. Perfect timing, actually. Get away from him. Taemin's voice was low, lethal, nothing like the careful control I'd heard from him before. Jaehyun thought you might come running, the man said, almost amused. Shame. I was hoping to finish this quietly. What happened next happened fast. Minho and 2 others pouring in behind Taemin, the man raising his hands in surrender the second he realized the odds had shifted. Sirens somewhere in the distance, that I later learned Minho had called the second they left the estate. But all I really remember is Taemin crossing the diner in 4 strides and pulling me out of that booth into his arms, like he'd been holding his breath since I walked out into the rain. I'm sorry, he said into my hair, voice breaking on the words. I should have believed you. I should have chosen you over my fear the second it mattered. You're an idiot, I whispered against his chest, crying again. The good kind this time. A very well-dressed idiot. I know. Jaehyun set you up. He's the one who's been planning this the whole time. I heard eliminate, but I think I heard it wrong. I think it was never about the senator surviving. It was about you not surviving whatever came after. I know that now too. He pulled back just enough to look at me, hands framing my face like something precious. You were right to trust what you heard. I should have trusted it too. I should have trusted you. He kissed me then, slow and certain, tasting like rain and relief. And somewhere behind us, I heard Minho mutter something about paperwork and idiots in love, but I didn't care about any of it. 2 weeks later, with Jaehyun in federal custody and the senator very much alive, Taemin knelt in that same kitchen where this whole mess started and asked me, quietly, if I'd consider staying for longer than a translation job. I said yes, before he finished the sentence. Epilogue, 6 months later. Jiwoo's POV. The kitchen smells like cedar and coffee these days, which still catches me off guard some mornings. The way home can sneak up on you when you're not paying attention. I still translate for Taemin, technically, though most of what I do now involves far fewer assassination plots and far more arguing with contractors about the greenhouse he's building, because I mentioned once, offhand, that I missed my grandmother's garden. You're doing the thing again, Taemin says from the doorway, watching me eavesdrop shamelessly on Minho's phone call 3 rooms away. I'm not eavesdropping, I'm supervising with my ears. That's not a real thing. Everything's a real thing if you say it with enough confidence, Alpha. I grin at him over my coffee, and he crosses the kitchen the way he always does now, unhurried, certain, and presses a kiss to my temple that still makes my whole chest go warm. Jaehyun's trial made the local news for exactly 1 week before something else took its place, the way these things always do. The senator sent a quiet thank you note that Taemin keeps in his desk drawer, next to the space where a gun used to be. The family council, for the first time in 6 years, stopped questioning whether Kang Taemin was fit to lead. He'd proven it the hard way, choosing loyalty over blood when it mattered most. My grandmother would have liked him, I think. Would have liked that her stubborn grandson finally learned to trust the gift she gave him, instead of running from it. Marry me, Taemin says, apropos of nothing, the way he does sometimes now, testing the words like he still can't quite believe he gets to ask. You already asked me that yesterday. I like asking. Ask me again in the greenhouse when it's finished, I say, kissing the corner of his mouth. I want a good story to tell people about how it happened. You already have a good story. Assassins, a storm, a diner rescue. Boring, I tease. Everyone loves a garden proposal. He laughs. That same startled sound from our first night together. Still my favorite thing I've ever heard. And outside the window, the Connecticut sky turns gold with early evening. Quiet and unremarkable, and entirely, finally, safe. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for the storm to pass. I got lucky. Mine led me home.